And I'm Revis Audio Buyers.
We are coming to you live from Ghana, West Africa. West
Elmina.
Africa.
Yes.
Elmina. That's where we are located, and we are loving it.
We are loving it. This is a beautiful place. So we want to always mention that please keep an ear out. We're going to begin doing live Torah sessions here in our home on Tuesday evenings called The Hebrew Perspective, where we'll be going over live with a group, intimate group of people. So if you're in the Elmina or Cape Coast area, or if you want to even travel here, it just depends on how hungry you are for the fellowship and for studying the word. And we are going to be meeting to begin to go over the word of Elohim, the Torah portion, in a set-apart gathering on Tuesdays. So we will continue to announce that until we get to a place where we finalize everything. Time is to be determined, and we will just keep your ear out listening to for that time. So if you are in the Cape Coast or Elmina area and you want to fellowship and come together.
And if you know someone who's in this area and you would like to refer them,
please do.
All are welcome.
That's right. We don't care. No matter where they're coming from, no matter what their background is. If they want to learn the truth of the Torah, if they want to learn the truth of what thus says the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then this will be the place on Tuesday night.
You mentioned the truth. Today, truth is questionable because people are going around with their own truth. Your truth, my truth,
her truth.
Everybody's coming up with their own truth. But we're talking about the truth of Yahweh. And truth, no matter whose truth it is, truth is verifiable or it's not truth.
That's right.
So this is what we're speaking concerning truth of Yahweh. And so if you want to know what his words contain, you have to find it within the pages of the Torah, his law.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to be looking at law today.
Absolutely.
And we're going to look at his truth.
Absolutely.
As opposed to everyone else's truth. And so once again, let's define it. Truth is verifiable.
Absolutely.
Truth is established at what?
At
two or three
witnesses. 2 or 3. Absolutely.
So we're going to begin with Exodus chapter 21 through chapter 24.
Yes.
And we have really begun to summarize, since it takes some time to get through and we never know when, the internet is going to be interrupted. So we're trying to work faster so that we can get through a greater amount in less time.
Absolutely.
So please forgive us if you're used to us reading all the way through. We will do more summarizing and ask of you, since we've already gone through a whole year. Now what I want you to do is begin to read the whole Torah portion on your own.
For yourself.
But then we will summarize. So even if you don't get to the whole thing before we start on it, begin to, after you've gone through it with us, read through, and you can perhaps play it, over while we are on recorded message. So let's begin. And this will go from Exodus chapter 21, verse 1 through, I think, verse 11 or 12, but we'll see. So this is going to be a summary of the first 10 verses. These are the right rulings which you are to set before when you buy a Hebrew servant. He serves 6 years, and in the 7th year he goes out free for naught. If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. Very important. Make sure you listen to these key points. So we're looking at a Hebrew slave and the law concerning a Hebrew slave.
Absolutely.
We'll read more because there's more details, but understand this is very important. Is this invalid now? No, this is very valid because this is going to play
Absolutely.
through towards the re-establishing of Yahweh's kingdom on earth.
That's right.
Because these are the people who he's going to redeem from the earth. He's redeeming the Hebrews who have been enslaved. And if you notice, there's big controversy right now.
That's right.
Who is Israel? Why? Because Israel is at the center of his laws that was given. And so is the world, all the other nations, free of these laws? No, it very much applies to all nations, all people. So if you have a Hebrew who was a Hebrew slave or is a Hebrew slave, or once a culture of people who have been enslaved, this is for you. If his master has given him a wife and she has borne him sons and daughters, the wife and the children are the master's, and he goes out by himself. Here's a division.
Right.
If he came in by himself and the master gave him a wife, she bore children. When it is time for him to be set free, when is it set free? When is he set free? At the Jubilee.
That's right.
The Jubilee is set free. There's two parts to the Jubilee. There's the 7th year, which is every 7th year. So 6 years he worked, but the 7th year he goes free. Pretty much sound like what Yahweh did in creation, right? 6 days he worked, and the 7th day he rested. Let me go a little deeper with that. Could it be that he's giving us an insight look to what he's doing in the earth? 1,000 years is as one day with Yahweh, and he's equating that to the time of man's work, and then the millennial kingdom.
There you go.
And then the Hebrew slave is also redeemed in that, because we know it better as a Jubilee. But Jubilee is, again, two components. Every 7th year times 7, that's 49, plus 1, that's 50. I just gave you a very condensed form of Jubilee and Shemitah, or the year of release. And so the year of release for Israel is the 400th year. And what has been taking place of late is the year of return. I hope you heard me when I said it. I will repeat it. The year of return. How is that so? You got 400 years. Well, that 400-year period is made up of 8 jubilees. And every jubilee stands for a period of time that is being counted down. And Yahweh is saying that the time is up for Israel,
there you go,
who have been enslaved to the nations. And now the Mashiach is getting ready to come and return to us as the deliverer.
Hallelujah.
This time it won't be Moses. During the Passover, we have a saying, Yahweh and not a seraph, Yahweh and not another. Yahweh.
Yes, he said,
Yahweh.
I was the destroyer.
So Yahweh is getting ready to come and place judgment on the nations, his people. Now, this is how you would read it in the scriptures, where it says, I shall allure them to the Isle of Jehoshaphat, not the Isle, but the mountains of Jehoshaphat. And there I shall sit in judgment with the nations. You might know it better by, in that day, it shall be as the days of Noah. This is Matthew chapter 24. He says, They would be speaking of wars and rumors of wars. There would be sickness, famine. All these things are the conditions of which we find ourselves in now. Look at COVID going back to 2019,
right,
2020. How many people did it take out? Millions of people. Yahweh is sitting in judgment with the nations, and then to a greater degree, he's going to also bring the armies into a place, and there he would also enter into judgment with the valley of Jehoshaphat. So again, this chapter is very important because he's going to enter, just like he did with Moses, he entered into judgment with Pharaoh and Misraim for Israel. And so he needs to bring Israel together.
That's right.
And we will become one kingdom once again. They asked this question. I'm hoping that these dots are making sense for you.
Yeah,
I'm connecting the
dots.
Acts chapter 7, verse 6 through 8 says, are you going to restore the reins to Israel at this time?
At this time.
Yeshua said, it's not for you to know what is in the authority of the Almighty.
Right.
And what he was saying was, at that point in time, it wasn't time for Israel to be restored to power, because they had to fall once again, and they did, to the Roman rule. And so once they fell to Roman rule, we are still under Roman rule, colonization.
As of this day.
Yes. And so these countries have been trying to come off from under Roman colonization, Greek, right? And so as they have been coming from under the different nations, we are now coming to the point where Mashiach is getting ready to return to us and restore Israel. But what has to happen first is destruction.
That's right.
And when destruction happens, there's also deliverance. Simultaneous destruction and deliverance. Too many people are waiting for him to crack the sky, and he comes and he just delivers Israel. Well, let me tell you, destruction and deliverance is simultaneous.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
and you can't separate that. And that's what he's done. That's his method. You know, Father Yah is methodical.
Yes.
In his approach to dealing with his enemies and dealing with those who he loves, his people, Israel. And he hasn't changed that method. So what we're going to see in the Torah today is really, I love this Torah portion because it talks about the hope. Humanity of owning a servant.
Yes.
And then we can look back into our history and we can see the inhumane treatment that servants were given, and the many articles, books from the slave narratives to the war fighting for rights, not equal rights, but just rights as a human. During the time, you know, Frederick Douglass, those Ida B. Wells, those who fought and stood out on the front line, trying to say, you're not treating us as humans. Well, this is not humane. And we're going to see in the Torah today how Father Yah calls us, even when we own a servant, how we are to address that servant, because never does he tell us to treat people inhumane.
I'm going to bring out a little bit more of the law concerning a Hebrew so that you can really grasp the depth of what Yahweh has done. So I'll repeat verse 4 to open up the other verses for it. But at the center of this is Leviticus chapter 23. I need for you to study that chapter.
always the center of everything, right?
It is. It is.
23.
If you are not familiar with it, if it doesn't apply to your life, then you don't have the seal.
You won't get it.
It is the seal that Revelation is talking about.
Right.
And what seals you, because we have to go through it.
Right.
We have to go through the judgment.
Exactly.
You will be touched where you need to be touched. Everyone, whether you're a Hebrew or not, if you are a part of the nations, if you are a Hebrew of Hebrew, it doesn't matter. Everyone will be examined by Leviticus chapter 23. Absolutely. It is our saving grace. Let me repeat verse 4. And while I'm at it, it starts with Passover. If you've not done Passover, if you've never experienced a real Passover, and this is where we're going, the opening of our year, right? You need to read up on it, study it. You can't just do it. You have to know. You have to process.
Preparation.
It is the preparation.
The preparation.
If you don't, it speaks against
you. Brings condemnation.
Yes, it definitely does.
Passover, the feast days. Passover is just one of those that you can't just jump into. Your home has to be prepared.
Yes,
your whole heart.
House.
Everything
just like with Moses, they
right.
had to put the blood over the door.
Right.
They had to experience the whole thing. Process. Even after that time of coming out of Mizraim, it was still 50 days later. They met Yahweh at the foot of Mount Sinai. So this is still playing out in our lives as well. So Jubilee is 50 years, right? So that was that 50-day walk towards Mount Sinai. So let's get into it and see how it applies here. Yes. Verse 4. If the master, who's the master? Yeshua, HaMashiach. Who's the master? Yahweh, Elohim. Verse 4. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons and daughters, and the wife and the children are the master's, and he goes out by himself. So in other words, if the slave, the time of his release comes, he came in by himself, he goes out by himself. But if the master, who's the master in this situation? Yahweh. Right. If the master has given him a wife, see, the master has given me a wife and children. So in other words, if I choose to walk by myself, I go out by myself. Contrary to word. Exactly, because this is where the wife says, I love the master. I wish to stay with him. The master says, agreed. He came in by himself, and the law is he goes out by himself. That's the Torah. So let's look at the flip side. Verse 5 is the flip side. And if the servant truly says, I love my master, he comes first. My wife, and we're talking Yahweh, spiritual, right? And children, let me not go out free. Then his master shall bring him before Elohim and shall bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and the master shall pierce the ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Forever. What master of mankind can you serve forever? Right. So this must be
only the one who is perpetual.
Exactly.
And the son of perpetuity.
So it's all about salvation, eternal, not just the earth. So we have to make that distinction that this is about, yes, the earthly master is our example, but Yahweh, HaMashiach, Yeshua HaMashiach is our eternal example. Absolutely. And when the master tells his daughter to be a female servant, she does not go out as the male servant do. So let's stick with verse 5 and 6 first and understand that if that servant, he goes out by himself, or if he says, I love my master and my wife and children, let me not go out free. In other words, he's to be branded by his ear, taken to the door, and an awl, one of those ice pricks, some may call it, very sharp point, and it's a prick. He says, take him to the door and take the awl and drill through his earlobe and place an earring in his ear. And it identifies him as
a bondservant.
A bondservant. He's free.
That's right.
It identifies him
of his own accord.
That's the difference.
He has chosen to be a servant to his master
forever.
And that's why what's so important when we see Shaul in the Brit Hadashah, the new covenant or renewed covenant, who says, I'm a bondservant of Yeshua HaMashiach. That's what he's saying. I put my ear to the doorpost, and he put the awe through. And now I am a bondservant, forever a servant.
And so let's match that up with ancient times. How they would take the blood and put it over the doorpost. When they put the blood of the lamb over the doorpost, and you take the servant to the door, what's already there? The blood.
The blood.
And so
the blood of the lamb is there.
The blood of the lamb.
Hallelujah. So
if Yeshua is now our most sacred and most awesome sacrifice, then the blood of the ultimate lamb is already there, mingled with the blood of the servant. And he becomes one with the master, one with his wife, children, and the master. And so he is now a bond servant forever. And so that's the lesson that we should learn of the commingling of the blood.
Of the blood.
Heirs.
Hallelujah.
And joint heirs with Mashiach.
Hallelujah. Thank you for a sacrifice.
So looking at verse 7, and when a man sells his daughter, so this is equal opportunity to be a female servant, she does not go out as the male servant do. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, who has engaged her to himself, then he shall let her be ransomed. If he shall have he shall have no authority to sell her to a foreign people because of him deceiving her. So
this is a huge picture of a whole lot that went wrong concerning the transatlantic slave trade, and concerning the Assyrian captivity,
exactly,
and many other places that we see scripturally where this is to protect that woman, because the woman, a lot of times the young lady will be sold into a family as a servant, or to a man to be his bride, because the family is in need, either owes the debt or is in need of the finance.
Yes.
So a lot of times in these cultures, and they still do it today, where they have these dowries set, where young ladies are over to families from a family that might not be as wealthy as the family that she's marrying into. And that's for a purpose. That's so that the family, her family, can then be esteemed. And a lot of times what goes along with that is that the other family that's not as well off as the family of the groom, that that family, her family, will always be taken care of. So there was much, there were logistics around a daughter, getting married and being given as a servant
Right,
or given
right.
in marriage to
Mhm.
a man or to another family. Many times it had nothing to do with love, that there wasn't that kind of relationship. But
Dowry.
dowry, because people were trying to always make a better life for themselves. So the daughter was a way to do that for a
Mhm.
family. And there are many cultures that do that still
Very
to
cultural.
this
Yes.
day. Still to this day, some young ladies are married off into families with wealth or royalty or some kind of esteemed where they have provision. And that means that their family will always be taken care of. So when we want to lessen the worth of a woman, we need to think about that, because a woman's worth she was a wealthy thing in these cultures.
And let's not forget that in a big way, these things, these practices were custom, traditions, even in political
Right.
realms,
Absolutely.
because you have people
Absolutely.
marrying into, as they say, wealth.
Mhm.
You would have a family. There's
Into
many movies
royalty.
out there.
Yes.
You would have many
Yes.
families
Mhm.
where it seemed like they still had wealth, may have ran out, but their hope was to marry their son or their daughter into wealth,
Right.
therefore lifting their own side of the family.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
the rich practice it.
They've practiced it
Very
for
much.
centuries.
Yes.
Centuries. We see those types of things. And one queen that comes to mind is Mary, Queen of Scots, who was her family. Scotland was taken over by the British, and so her father's lineage was on the verge of being destroyed. So she went out and, for political purposes, married into French royalty, hoping that that would save her. Eventually, it did not. And she ended up losing her life to Queen Elizabeth I, because and they were first cousins. So, but there was very, it was strategic. These were strategic moves. So when we talk about when it says when a man sells his daughter to be a female servant, that sounds so horrible. But a lot of times she's doing it and willing to do it so that her family will be taken care of, and that she will be taken care of and provided for. And let me tell you, you couldn't mistreat her or treat her badly. And we're going to see that in here. It says where he could not sell her if he saw any displeasing thing he saw her. He could not sell her to who? A foreign people. That, in the Hebrew standpoint, would be inhumane. You don't do that. You don't sell your daughters out to a foreign people, because anything could happen. She could be put into prostitution. She could be not treated well. There are many cultures where they didn't treat women well. She could have lost her life, sending her into a place with foreign people. And that's why Father God, the Torah says she is not to be sent with foreign people. She's to be treated well and to be esteemed.
Let me give you another quick example and move on, but so you can see how even today it is still practiced. Let's go to Trump, President Trump, his son-in-law and his daughter. There's a good example of the fusion of the two families. Trump with his, his money, then his daughter by Ivana, who marries is something Kurd. I can't think of his name, but it's something. But that fusion put a big boost to his family, because it got him, with the Trump name, got him into doors of big political places where he then was able to work on behalf of President Trump, being his son-in-law, and with Ivana, the two of them becoming they would call a power couple, but because of their father and because of his father. And so see how it still go from generation to generation where they use money to attract money.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna leave
That
that.
for years,
Yes.
centuries, centuries down through the years. And that's what this is talking about, because a lot of times it was done for that purpose. We also see King Shalomo, or Solomon, as he was called. He ended up with 300 wives and 700 concubines,
Right.
because he was making treaties with other nations. He was a man of peace. So he was making treaties, and they would say, okay, take my daughter. Okay, take my daughter.
Right.
And he went, okay, and put her over there with everybody else in the palace, So
it's a vested interest.
Right.
You can't go to war with me because you're married
I'm
to
married
my
to
daughter.
your daughter. Exactly. We're family. You'll be fighting against your own grandchildren. So this is one of those biblical.
So it's very big.
that
When you
we
deal
see.
with the wife or the daughter, it's very big. So we better leave
It really
that.
is. So yeah, we gotta go on.
So that took us through verse 7, 8. So verse 8 is the flip side. It says, if she is displeasing in the eyes of a master who was engaged to her, then he shall let her be ransomed. She is ransomed. She is not sold. That's the
Not
difference.
sold.
He shall have no authority to sell her to a foreign people because of him deceiving her.
Right.
If he has engaged her to his son, now here's another aspect.
Right.
He is to do to her as is the right
of daughters.
So
there's the humanity.
The female,
that's right,
in this equation is huge.
Absolutely.
Huge. I know down through the generations, down through time, we always felt that women get the short end of the stick. But when you magnify it under the Torah,
right,
you really realize that Yahweh has put a tremendous amount of fencing around the daughters. It may not look like it. At times, if people could say it, they would say Yahweh is a male chauvinist, because all the laws are centered around man and woman, yes, but keeping her in line.
Yeah.
And so, when you look at how she dresses, how she, her culture, how, she deals with certain laws, but every law, I guarantee you, addresses a man first and then the female.
That's right.
And I promise I'm going to go into this. Wherever she sits, become unclean. Wherever she lies down, becomes unclean. And so we've taken that and just ran away with it.
But
women are unclean.
He started with man.
He started. That's my point. He started with the man.
Absolutely.
And so in order to get that right, you got to go through the Torah. You got to go through the book of Leviticus and get the laws concerning a man and a woman, both independently. And then understand how it applies.
And the bottom line to it all, when Father Yah created woman, everything in the garden was complete. He walked her in to a complete place. She does not, so think of this. Woman is not supposed to know lack. Bottom line. She's not supposed to know lack.
And there's another good example of starting with man, because man wasn't supposed to know lack. He had everything in the garden
that he needed
until the original sin took place.
Until it failed.
And then it was both man and woman. But when she created, when she broke that Torah or that law, it was, Yahweh's attention. But once he broke it, that's when it went into the earth, and all existence, all mankind, all the animals.
That's right.
Because Yahweh gave him
the
commandment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was supposed to be there to govern over, to take care of.
Right. He was her
bride.
protection.
He was her protection, and he fell on his job. But woman is supposed to be provided for,
right,
and encircled and encamped. She's supposed to be taken care of. And that's what this Torah is all about. Is that if she is given over to be his servant, she's not given because she's done something wrong or she's evil or unclean or blah blah blah. But it's for a specific reason. And if she goes in and the man decides, okay, I don't really like her that much, I'm gonna let her go, then he has to give her all rights to if he gives for a son, he has to give her all rights. And as we get further into the Torah portion, into the Torah, we find also that she can go free. That she can go free and be able to go and make a life and marry another. So this is Father Yahweh's very humane way of taking care of daughters, because daughters didn't get land inheritances.
Right.
You know,
because she was to be provided for.
There you go. Her father takes care of her, then her husband takes care of her, and then all Israel takes care of her.
And you know, I would say this would be a big controversy or a big argument even to this day. Woman was supposed to always to be taken care of from a father, then her husband. And now you have a generation who's been taught, I'm an independent woman, hear me roar. And so I don't need a man. What was that? Opening the door for another perversion. Because, you know, I can get what I need from another woman and I can be her man too. So just recognize the perversion that's coming out of that. And it's huge, because what has blossomed out of it is pure sin, pure evil.
And what we're not saying is that we have a daughter who's an adult, and she has her own apartment. She works on her own, takes care of herself, has her own car and job and on all that. What we're not saying is because a young lady moves out of her parents' house and becomes independent, that's something evil about that. That's what we're not saying. What we're saying is that womanist, that feminist movement that's going on, and that has promoted lesbianism. It has promoted I don't need a man, and very male, just obstinate anti male rhetoric. You know, there's a lot of don't open the door for me, don't do this, don't do that. Now, there's some parts of the movement that I absolutely agree with. I believe if a man and woman have the same qualification, the same education, and they're doing a job, they should get paid the same. That's not right to pay somebody else because of their gender. But when you get really into that feminist movement, it's a whole lot deeper, and it's a whole lot. There's a whole lot more there. So we're just stating that there are things that have worked within our society, that have caused things to be tainted and have caused things to not go the way of Father Yahweh, because we have many beautiful Hebrew women who are not married yet, just as we have many wonderful Hebrew men who are looking for their Isha, looking for their bride. So we believe that Father Yah has appointed all of this. He's giving every bit of this Torah. Why? Because he's building a nation. He's solidifying a government so they will be able to work and live in peace and safety.
I told y'all this is huge. When you look at the woman's side, women are very much protected by Yahweh.
Absolutely.
And here's the bottom line. So let's go spiritual for a second. Well, more than a second, of course. But let's look at the spiritual implications of that verse 8. How the end of it says, he shall have no authority to sell her to a foreign people because of him deceiving her. So let's look at that from the spiritual point now. You can't sell the daughter to a foreign people. Why? Yahweh's bride shall not be sold to a foreign people. And that's just what happened.
That's exactly right.
Israel, the bride of Mashiach, many would say the bride of Christ. This is talking about the bride. All about the bride because of him deceiving her. How was she deceived? She was told lies. She was told, we are the bride of Christ, and we don't have to obey the laws of the Torah any longer. So she was deceived.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so as the awakening is happening, you have many Christians who are awakening and saying, you know what? Why am I a Christian?
Yeah.
And because it doesn't agree with this right here. This flies in the face of Christendom.
Right, exactly. And because Christendom says you don't have to keep the commandments. Right. Now they'll say, oh no, you have to keep the commandments, but just some of them. But who makes that?
Some people have even gotten brave enough to say we're no longer under the Big Ten.
The Big Ten, the commandments.
It's like,
is it okay?
let's name it.
Is it okay for a person to commit adultery, or to steal, or to profane, or
that's part of the Big Ten.
Dishonor their parents? I mean, that's
not the deception
okay. That
of
is
the bride.
Absolutely.
She's running around thinking she's speaking in tongue, and
I'm good,
and claiming,
and not obedient.
I've been washed from my sins,
and not obedient to the commandments of the Most High, the very covenant that Father Yah set out and gave to his people, his love language, his letter of love, his ketubah, his wedding, his marriage certificate. And they have spit on it and said, I don't have to do that. And that is against everything that Father Yahweh has instilled in his people and has prescribed for his people. So many people are coming out of that. Christianity has a lot to pay for.
Yes. Let's look at a little more laws concerning the female and that bride. It says in verse 9, if he has engaged her to his son, and he is to do to her as is the right of a daughter. If he takes another wife, her food, her covering, and her marriage rights are not to be diminished.
Conjugal rights, that's right. Not be diminished.
Here is another, you have three aspects of the law here concerning the bride, that her food, her covering, and her marriage rights are not diminished.
Not diminished. And then in 11 is where I was saying, and if he doesn't do these three for her, she goes out for naught without silver. Then she goes out for naught without silver. But she does not, she can leave him. That's what it says. She can, if he does not do these three things, she can leave him and either go back to her family or go out and be married to another man.
And again, she is ransomed, not sold.
Not sold.
Ransomed.
That's huge.
Not sold.
That's a big.
These are the
big
laws
difference.
Dealing with a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, and as a slave, there are slave rights. And so when you throw these away, you threw away all of your rights. And so in that verse 11, he does not do these. If he don't do these three as you were speaking, then she goes out without silver. Um, if he does not do these three, then she shall go out for nothing without silver. So those first 11, and that again, that's the bride of Mashiach.
That's right.
So this applies because these things have not been afforded to the bride of Mashiach, and she's getting ready to be set free by Mashiach because her rights have been violated.
Have been diminished. That's right.
Okay, when he goes back to the man in verse 12, he who strikes a man so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. Very important, because look at slavery. How many Hebrews have been killed? How many slaves? Let me go with what you understand. How many black men have been killed? This is going to play huge in this verse. Verse 13, but if he does not lie in wait, but Elohim delivered him into his hand, then I shall appoint for you a place where he is to flee. So that's the place of refuge. Yeshua is our place of refuge, and there's judgment, whether it's for you or against you, and he will give the perfect judgment. But when a man acts presumptuously against his neighbor to kill him, I told you these about the 10 commandments. To kill him by treachery, you are to take him even from my slaughter place to die. And he who strikes his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. How many people have killed their parents? Man, these are still relevant. 16, and he who kidnaps a man, watch this, and sells him, or he is found in his hand, shall certainly be put to death. And so this is one reason you will see that Israel among the nations, he says, when he returns, and if you are found in his hand, you shall be put to death. So this is judgment against the nation.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the person will be free.
Yes.
So there we go with the deliverance and the destruction.
Simultaneous.
So you have to make a choice whether you want to be on the side of Yahweh or on the side of his enemies, because there's going to be destruction and there's going to be deliverance for his people.
From here, I'll just call out a few things so you can see how the law is still being relevant, how it's operating. Verse 24, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash, equality. Verse 30, if a sin covering is laid upon him, then he shall give the ransom of his life, whatever is laid on him, whether it has gored a son, gored a daughter, according to the right ruling is done to him. So this is your animal that gets free, and he has gored a man, woman, boy, girl. There's a law dealing with livestock and people's lives.
He's making a nation. So he had to deal with everything within that nation. Absolutely.
So 22, I'm going to kind of really rush through. 22, when a man steals an ox or a sheep and shall slaughter it or sell it, he repays 5 cattle for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. So that's the evaluation for equality. If you take in one, you pay back multiple. Yahweh, he set his laws. Verse 6, when fire breaks out and spreads to thorns bushes, so that the stacked grain or standing grain or the field is consumed, He who kindled the fire shall certainly repay. When a man gives silver or gold or goods to his neighbor to guard, and it is stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he repays double. Watch this. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought before Elohim to see whether he has put his hand to his neighbor's goods. In other words, he gives a lie. If he gives a lie and say it was stolen, then he sits before Yahweh's judgment and will pay accordingly. Let's see. And that you see, you want to go into verse 16. When a man entices a maiden who is engaged who is not engaged, he lies with her. He shall certainly pay the bride price for her to be his wife. But if the father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of the maiden. Again, another very powerful law concerning a female who has been taken by a male, whether enticed or just deceived. Yahweh have laws to govern.
That's right.